So, Andrew, our summer episode, our final summer episode of the summer before we go into the big sweat, and we'll return in September, I guess, huh?
The Big Sweat. That sounds like a movie, like The Big Chill.
Yeah.
You should make a movie called The Big Sweat.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's about
Big,
global warming.
the big stinky sweat. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So
So,
things are hot over where you are always.
yeah, well, at your end as well, no? And near Paris, you have the Olympics going on there.
Yeah, things are hot over here.
Mm.
Yeah, the Olympics are going on in Paris. A very interesting, you know, let's say controversy at the Olympic
What's the
festival.
controversy?
Well, it's not really a controversy. It's sort of like the ultimate expression of woke would be like the Last Supper.
Why is
Uh,
that?
because it's an expression of ultimate diversity, right? Ultimate inclusion, ultimate, all those things that the wokesters love, right? You
What's
know,
wrong with that?
free sex, fat people.
I love fat people.
What could be better?
I love
And
fat
even
people.
little hints of pedophilia, all kinds of great stuff.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's a little girl there, and then we started rubbing each other.
Who's rubbing the girl?
I don't know, but very controversial.
Well, I think it's great.
Do you?
Yes.
I think it's shocking and disgraceful.
I think it's fantastic.
I know because you're a bacchanalian, Dionysian hedonist.
No, who is allowed if not the French? No?
Yeah, well, it's kind of what I was thinking of. It's like it's like a big arc of history. It starts off in the French Revolution and kind of ends now. This is like the ultimate expression of that. You even have Marie Antoinette's head and the heavy metal band playing, and that was cool, I thought. I
Yeah.
mean, could you not like that? I mean, um, the other, but the Last Supper tableau is like, okay, I guess, you know, the question is it a turn on or is it just another of Duchamp's sort of toilets? What is it? You know? I
Everything
mean,
that
the
makes fun of
conservatives are
Christianity.
the fact that the conservatives are so shocked by it and are talking about it as if it's the end of the West, and the great code of the West is faltering, and the neo-pagans are coming in and destroying. The fact that it tells me that it's like the conservatives are most turned on by it. Like they're the most like really turned on by it. For me,
Yeah.
it's just like, so what? It's not a turn on particularly, but it's not, but it's nothing. It's just kind of what's out there right now. It's kind of like what people are kind of like doing.
Oh, well, I'm talking about this for years on end. Uh, whatever the West is, it's that we transcended, the mythical, traditional kind of worldview, and got to secularism and democracy and Bildung and all of this. And so we're supposed to make fun about Christianity and we're supposed to transgress Christianity. And we are the only ones that can do it. It's like imagine like up to a certain degree, we wouldn't dare to, make fun of Islamic imagery because then we would have faced the consequences. That
Right,
means chopped off heads, basically.
right, right.
But as far as our own religious background is concerned, we are allowed and we are supposed to make fun of Christianity, and that's what the West is about. And so I think it's great.
The West is about making fun of Christianity. Well, yes and no. I mean, if you're just being ironic all the time, you're not really.
No, we
Uh,
transcended it. That's what I mean. We
we're
developed a
just
new.
being ironic. It's nothing new or exciting to be ironic all the time.
No,
It's just
I'm not talking about being ironic. I'm talking about epistemes. We developed a new episteme, a new worldview 250 years ago. And
mm,
that meant
yeah.
that we developed the idea of the individual that is not governed by God. And
Which
the
is the
Christian
most
word,
Protestant idea ever, right? So it is the most Christian idea ever, in a sense, right? It is, so anyway, this is where we have our slight sort of disagreement here, I think.
Yeah, but not everything is the same, Andrew. You can't, it's like there is an increase of value. It's like, yeah, still the Protestantism and Christianity is still embedded, but there's a surplus there that developed 200 years ago, and that means that we can make fun of Christianity without the fear of our heads being chopped off.
Yeah, no, 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 I agree, and that's great. But also, we have to acknowledge that, everything in the West came from Christianity.
No, sure, I'm not denying this. I'm just
Okay,
saying
well
that,
then we're not really
just saying there's a
we
surplus.
don't really have an argument, I guess,
No,
if we don't really have an argument here. I find like this the critique of Christianity a little bit facile, or just just ironic, and nothing particularly radical or new. It's like, okay, well, why don't and people sort of claiming that Christianity is the oppressor in the West, and all that sort of thing. And so you have a bunch of men, and Jesus, that's the Last Supper, and now you have a bunch of gays, and that's the New Supper, I guess, or so great. I mean, I'm all for it, but I'm not,
you have gays that are the new supper. That's an innuendo in there,
the
huh?
New Supper, right? So we're having instead of the Last Supper, we're having the New Supper, and the New Supper is this big blue naked guy sitting on the New Supper is Dionysian. But again, that isn't anything new. That's just the same old trope from the 60s. So I don't think we're into postmodernism yet. I
I
think
mean,
we're
it
just
wasn't
repeating the same
just
postmodernism.
like a 3 minute bit out of a 3 hour presentation. I mean, there was Celine Dion and there was so much stuff going on and a couple of people in drag, basically. No?
Yeah, but it seemed to have a sort of powerful, iconic effect, and it was a reference to like the Last Supper.
It's like for me, it's always very complicated to distinguish between the event itself and that what the media wants to make out of it. Because I mean, it's like there's this fascinating interview with Tucker Carlson. Basically, he has like an address and I don't know, it's like in Australia, I think, in a conference, and he talks about the role of media, and so he says that, and it's like so I went down this complete rabbit hole. Curtis Yarvis and the think tank and the people behind the alt-right movement, behind Bannon and the Trump movement like 4 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever. And so the idea that the Tucker Carlson kind of presented that that media is a kind of cathedral, the new cathedral, because they are the gatekeepers of truth
Mhm.
and because they decide what your news feed will be. And it's this coming from Tucker Carlson is quite interesting because he worked so much for years and years on Fox, I think, and is one of the most famous television hosts there is on this planet. And his goal, he says, is like to destroy the mainstream media as it is, like completely, because they're just independently of if you're right or left, it just, they kind of distort the image of, so it's not independent uh, corresponding anymore. It's not, okay, we are the media and we're the people that kind of control the politics of what they're doing is right or wrong. It's
Mhm.
like they're now in cahoots with politics. And this is what Curtis Janis Jarvis calls the cathedral, right?
Of course, they're in
And
cahoots with politics. I mean, have they ever not been?
yeah, well, I mean, there
This
was,
is what my question, people are
to
saying
the
like,
90s, there was, the self-understanding in universities and in media that they have to be like what is it called? The fourth estate.
right.
So, as an institution, to be a counterpoint and to be a controlling aspect of politics, that never really worked 100%. But if you look at, Carl Bernstein and the Watergate scandal and all these kind of things, that grew out of the sentiment that the journalist had to control what the politicians are doing. And I mean, journalists were bribed, and you know how it goes. But generally, but now what you get
Yeah.
is a completely, just to get my point across, is completely, homogenization between what like in America, what the DNC has, for example, as talking points for the media that kind
Mm.
of gets repeated by the media, even so it's like to a point where the DNC talking points reach German media outlets, and this is weird, right?
Oh, it's global, and also, I
Right.
mean, it's kind of on the other side. At that time, that you're talking about, there were just a few media channels, whereas now everybody's a media channel. So you had a gated system, right, with professional journalists, right, and so there was a potential for a coherent message. But when you have a billion people, who have some kind of a message, and everything is run by advertising. I mean, everything is advertising basically. That's the point. So yeah, what I find very interesting is like Kamala Harris, right? Her image before she became the future, let's say, leader of the Democrats was sort of, she had this very negative image. And then suddenly I'm getting these images that she's some sort of savior or some sort of, you know, there's even an image of her like as the Statue of Liberty, and they're really playing with symbolism, and they really that's why I think this Last Supper thing it's not as arbitrary as or as people think. It's all symbolism, right?
Well,
It's
that's what I
it's all
mean.
it's all the use of powerful symbolism to manipulate you, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's in a way, it's you just have to learn what the symbols are, and and know what they mean. And so suddenly Camilla, what's her name? Camilla, is black. Before she was Indian. Now she's black, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. So you had these kind of internal memoranda from the DNC, the Democratic National Center, that is responsible for the politics and for the public communication, and so they had the talking points and the idea to change the image, and for political party to do this is perfectly fine, because as you say, they have to advertise it, but that these talking points got to be part of the mainstream media, that they got picked up and got to be distributed by the mainstream media, whose primarily function should be to be critical of these manufactured narratives, you know,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that the critical distance between media and politics is lost, to the fact that now in Germany you get all this imagery that you're talking about, but that was designed by the inner core of the Democratic Party in the United States. And there's no controlling filter anymore. It's just like, oh no, it's like before 2 weeks before, Kamala Harris was an incompetent, and everybody knew this, an incompetent a politician with very, very bad policies. And
Mhm.
now through
I don't even know
narratives,
what she was because I'm so manipulated by the media,
well,
right? You
I
say, oh
talked.
yeah, but I mean that's also a narrative, right? So that she's terrible and incompetent, and that's very a simple narrative that's very easy to for the right wing in their particular algorithm.
Oh, well, I
So
talked with historian Thaddeus Russell about this, and he talked about what kind of policies she had actually.
mhm.
It's like actually like quite conservative in terms of marijuana use, how she dealt with the prison system in the United States, how she dealt with borders control, and as a she's not a competent politician by all means, and I mean,
Well, what I'm saying, that's just another narrative.
no,
Now
that's
she's
fact. You
now
can
it's just
see.
suddenly she's like a hero. Before she was an incompetent politician. I question both narratives. Like the first narrative is one kind of talking point, and the second narrative is another. I rather say I don't know what she is.
Yeah,
I don't
but you
know.
can. The difference is that you can't point to any things that she has done now, as a
Mhm.
savior, but you can point to a lot of things actually that she did in the last 20 years, that are far from bueno, let's say.
Well, she
So you
must be
can,
competent enough to to be the vice president. So, and she must have been a pretty good prosecutor. I don't know. I just don't know. That's
that's
my
the
only.
point. She was a hardliner as a prosecutor. That's the whole point. So there
Yeah.
were like people that were apparently, about to release out of prison, which she completely blocked. So it's like she was as far as I understand, she was like a hardliner,
Right.
basically.
So now she has this image of the compassionate mother, who's, but actually she's a mega bitch. Is
I don't
that
know
what
if
you're
she's a.
saying?
I mean, I don't know if she's a mega bitch. I think she's like a hawk. What will happen is that she will prolong the Ukraine war because that's in the interest of the Democratic Party, and you know, and now she's designed as a kind of female savior, again, which is fine if you like within the party system, but as a media
Well, it works.
institution, you
She's gonna
should
win,
you sh
obviously.
huh?
It's interesting. I think she's gonna win. I think it works. I think whatever they were doing, whatever their maneuvers were, the Democratic Party, I think they weren't as dumb as people were thinking. I think what they did kind of worked. I mean, it is working. Like she is gonna win.
I don't think so.
I think she is. I think it's just like they're playing chess and they made their move there and she's gonna win because she ticks off all the kind of boxes. Trump doesn't want to debate her because she's a wicked prosecutor. He's kind of, you know, he's sort of in the background now. And you think Trump's gonna win, hey? I don't. I
Obviously,
think what? Hmm.
obviously.
Well, maybe Trump's going to win because I've been brainwashed by the new narrative and the images that I'm seeing in my feed, which is why I don't believe any of it.
I think he will win because what the Democrats still haven't learned is, what Trump still represents is, represents is the trickster figure that wants to hijack the media system in itself. And that was exactly the way he won the election the first time by hijacking, the normal way of manufacturing consent from the Democratic Party. And so this is what he's doing already. It's like he had like an interview yesterday where he said, so she was Indian one day and now she's black, and I don't care either way. It just shows that she doesn't care, and so
No,
that's you know.
she's Indian and black. Yeah, but she's a politician. So what do you expect? Like, you know, I
No,
mean,
but that's not the point I was trying to make. It's like she still plays with the playbook of the Democratic Party, and that means the construction of certain narratives and ways. And Trump always was outside of the system, and he
that's
will
true.
and he will continue to just deconstruct all these weird maneuvers that the Democratic Party will come up with. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
it's like why do I even care? Because I'm
No,
sitting.
my guess is she's gonna win because she's a black woman. And then she's good, but and that's like people want novelty, people want entertainment. And maybe because she's competent, I don't know, and maybe that all the narratives before were a lie, but I'm not making any comments about what is good or bad or right or wrong. I'm just saying, like, what's the optic? What do people want? People want a hero story, and they cast her as this hero, which that's taken over Trump's role as being this outsider hero. Now she has let's say she has the Trump card that Trump would have had.
I wonder. I
She's
wonder
she's
if.
won. She's got the Trump card. The person who has the Trump card wins, right? And Trump used to have the Trump card, but now she has it because
I
they've
always look
they've
at this
managed to
from.
so skillfully shift the narrative over that people all these people that never heard a word about her before are suddenly championing her and thinking she's wonderful and are 100% behind her and all that sort of thing.
I think like one of the issues is, and I haven't figured that out yet, is like there's this idea that, the democratic process still works in a way that that the people decide who will be, president or chancellor or whatnot. And I think that's an illusion in a kind of way that,
Hmm.
these kind of decisions, there's a Grand Canyon that we as a citizens cannot cross. And on the other side are the inner workings of parties and quasi monarchical structures that decide. Is like, do we want the Ukraine war to continue? Then we should probably go with Kamala Harris. And there's like internal struggling and strife in a kind of way that's way more important in deciding who's becoming president than what the public thinks. That's what I
Or
think.
even worse, that there is no conspiracy. It's just run by unconscious mechanisms, by algorithms, by machines. Like there is no actual conspiracy. It's just there's no powerful people behind the whole thing. There is a powerful group of people, but even they're not in control of it. It's sort of it's taken on it's a sort of life of its own. It's more like a what's that word for a collective spirit that was making the rounds a bit? An egregore, or
Yeah,
it's whatever egregore is sort of taking over the collective minds because we don't have a singular mind. We're collective minds, right?
right.
It's rare for people to have singular minds, and it's rare for people to be even thoughtful about these things. It's mostly an algorithm, and it's mostly an egregore that controls the narratives. So is it individuals and is it this sort of conspiracy? Sometimes a little bit. I'm not sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, we have this good faith, thinking in terms of, counting votes. But I mean, we know for a fact that Bush stole the what is it called? The election from Al Gore. I mean, we have that. This is a proof that happened, and I sometimes think we forgot history. So it's like if you like have, people that count the votes and those people are biased, of course they will miscount or they will find ways to manipulate the outcome. And
Hmm.
and that happened. It's like you don't even have to go to, you just look at what happened with Bush and Gore. That's like, you know,
Well, you say that happened, and my question, mine goes, it's a fact that happened. It's like, oh, okay, well, did it? I don't know. How do I know anything? Hmm. How do I know that that's just not another narrative? It's just like narratives within narratives within narratives within
yeah, but
narratives.
that's the
How
the
does anybody know
postmodern,
anything?
that's the postmodern kind of conundrum narratives. I mean, there are facts and you can look it up that happened with Bush and
Oh,
Gore.
yeah, but I bet you somebody has an argument and has more fa that's better than your argument, who knows? Okay, maybe that's a fact. I just don't know. Really, I just don't know because I don't put my attention there. Like I'm not going to put my attention there because it's a waste of time.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, but I'm just wanting to say it's like we have this, these kind of narratives that we orient ourselves with, and so it's like one of the narratives at the moment is, democracy itself is under attack, and everybody is kind of repeating this in media, in the politics, as if, the right-wing spectrum um, has no validity in itself. There has to be, discourse of ideas, and that includes, right wing, even like in Germany, for example, even the most hard right Nazi um, kind of worldviews and arguments are protected by the law. So there's an article in the foundational law of Germany that says, it's like you even those hardline perspectives and worldviews are protected by free speech. And that doesn't, it is not beautiful. It's not like, it's not easy to contend with somebody who is like a fascist. But in order to secure a proper discourse in society, you need to hear all voices,
Yeah.
right? And then there's the argument that, you know, democracy is under attack because of these right-wing voices. And it's like, it's hard to demarcate all these kind of different things that are floating around. That's what I'm saying. And it's
Maybe
like,
it's the
you know,
other way around. Maybe if those voices aren't being heard, democracy is under attack.
yeah, that's what I mean.
This we have to feel a lot of discomfort, you know. We have to be tough enough to face the discomfort of views that are not like our own and stand up to that rather than just
Exactly.
trying to filter them out completely, which I think a lot of people are maybe are doing. But it doesn't work. The good news is it doesn't really work. Like as you say, the whole Kamala Harris propaganda campaign, whatever it is, it seems to be working now, but then something else will come along and you know, and some other voices will come along to criticize it and so there is a way in which there is a way in which there is sort of some kind of free speech operating. There's some sort of kick pushback is still in operation, which is the good news. Like if you were in another place like North Korea, there'd be none, right? But there's still a lot of pushback and kickback, and there's you know,
No, yeah, sure.
so that's a good thing, I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I'm just saying it's difficult. I mean, on one side, it's apparent. If you like, if there's such a change in narrative from one day to another, it's like it's so blatantly obvious that
mhm.
it's very. You have to be very stupid to fall for this. You know, to be captured by the idea of Kamala as a savior,
Well,
right?
people are very stupid. I mean, and they will be captured by all kinds of things. I mean, just because of the collective mind, because of the power of the collective mind, because of the power of samsara, if I could say so.
Yeah, but there
It's
are
really
also very
powerful.
lot of people that are red pilled, you know, by this time now against, you know, they're like kind of
Yeah.
innocuate against these kind of propaganda machines increasingly, and that's where Trump gets his power from people that, you know, are fed up with this kind of you know, manufacturing consent basically.
But I think the red pill becomes another blue pill. I mean, you know, it just becomes another like another narrative. It's like it's just the anti-narrative, and isn't really a third way. It's just another like the anti-woke movement has just become so obvious. It's just it has it's as obvious as the woke movement in a way. They're both very obvious at this point. They're both it would seem to
Exactly.
they're both just far too obvious.
Yeah.
So I don't trust the woke or the anti-woke movement. Like I always want to put myself in a third position. It's like with this Paris thing. It's like as soon as these images come out, you look on Twitter, it's like, oh, this is the downfall of the West, this is utter decadence, we're all gonna, you know, it's a sign of the apocalypse, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the conservative narratives
Yeah.
say. And then the woke narrative would be like, this is freedom, this is great, this is wonderful, we're all free now. We can, you know, we're free to criticize the patriarchy and blah blah blah, and then has no symbolic significance whatsoever. And I don't agree with that narrative either. I think I don't agree with either side of the like either side of the narrative is a dualistic sort of limited and narrow perspective of what reality is. So I'll look for the third
So
wherever the
what is
third
this
is.
third thing in terms
Yeah,
of, you know, this
we're
imagery?
the third, you know, or other people like us are the third, right?
No, no, but what do you think then, if you're not to the belong to the woke nor the anti-woke perspective? So what does this Christian imagery or, you know, this display mean to you? What do you see in there?
What do I see in there is, well, how do I, yeah, well, on one hand, I'd say great diversity, like that's great, yes, but complete diversity with no center is to utter chaos. So I see sort of chaos and order. It's like, okay, you have a bunch of men and Jesus, and that's like the old world, and that's obviously we're not there anymore, right? We're not in this patriarchal old world society where there's, you know, no women, no gay people, nothing involved. So that's, you know, the Last Supper. And the patriarchy, I don't have a nostalgic desire to go back to that. Um, but on the other hand, complete fragmentation, complete diversity with no center, complete Bacchus. Like I think Jonathan Pageau had a pretty good analysis where it's like the when you try to make the edges that the carnival or the Mardi Gras, the way you run your society, it doesn't really work. The carnival and the Mardi Gras and the exception and the has to happen at certain times of years and festivals. And if you want to make your entire life a circus, that's only for that doesn't work all the time. There has to be some seriousness and gravity and gravitas. And so I think that this sort of celebration of this was a little bit false, and also don't think it was great art either. So, and it wasn't that much of a turn on, right? So if it's going to be sexual and attractive and erotic, then should be sexual and attractive and erotic, not just bestial and weird, you know. So I think that we're lacking in aesthetics, and we just think the whatever is freakish is cool. And so on the left, right, there's a lacking of a good deep aesthetics of beauty, right, and it's very obvious. Like, uh, um, and on the right, no, I don't think we're going to go back to the old Christian code. I think we live in a world where there are many different, traditions, and we've come some way towards tolerance, which is a good thing.
But aren't
Mm.
you with that not just simply, back and forth between a wokist and a non-wokist perspective, let's say with some extra steps? I mean, it's like that's what it is about, It's just, you just bring these two together. It's like on one hand, another thing, but it's like, or what do you mean? It's like what is your perspective?
Or are you trying to rope me into this is good or this is bad? I don't have that
I'm not,
perspective.
I'm not roping you into anything. I'm roping you into like a concrete perspective instead of,
Yeah, you're trying to rope me into taking sides, and I don't take any side.
no, but maybe there's a third side that is beyond just saying, yeah, there's one thing, but then there's also the other thing.
Well, what do you think? I mean, you're asking me, and I gave you what I saw was true in both those perspectives. I take what is true from all the perspectives, but what I think is true. I don't have to, I'm not required to manipulate that and create an ideology out of it. I just say, oh, in the moment, this seems kind of true. And, you know,
I mean, let me give you another example from the Olympics. Um, so apparently, there's a boxing contest where today actually a woman has to face a trans man,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's
Well, no,
terrified.
yeah. So that's bullshit to me. That's just
It's the
obvious.
same thing. You understand that you could make the case, okay, it's one,
No,
it's
I have a
freedom.
perspective there. I have a clear perspective. Okay.
Right. There we go. What's
Yeah.
your clear perspective?
Well, my clear perspective is that is that that would be that's wrong for it's a manipulation, right? It's wrong
Why is it wrong?
because it's unfair to the women who are competing to have a guy in the game, even if
But it is a woman.
he's a she. What? Oh, come on, Tom. We have some part is real and some part is fiction, and some part is a fictional identity. But yeah, that's kind of a transgression that feels to me like a transgression. And also, I guess like I heard that they had this bacchanalian thing and there was a little girl there, so I thought I would say that was wrong to bring in a little girl to all that. I think that's adult stuff. The Bacchus event
So
is
how
should
about
be
how
should
about
be
it
a
would be
closed tantric ritual, and it should be a festival, there should be no children allowed. It shouldn't be. So yes, I do have a bit of a feeling that there's no lines being drawn, that this freedom is actually kind of opens up the potential for monstrosity, especially when it comes to children. So adult stuff should be adult stuff, children's stuff should be children's stuff. This is the Olympics. Keep the keep the sex away from the children. you know That's a perspective.
How about we normalize hitting women again?
That's, obviously would be wrong. Yeah.
But that's what we're doing, no?
What do you mean? What are you talking about, Tom?
I'm talking still about the Olympics.
What, hitting women? Oh, I see what the trans thing. Oh, okay, yeah. Normalizing women again. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, didn't think about that perspective. Um,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not now, by now, you can, I mean, the effect is that by now it's like in the domestic circumstance, you can just hit your woman now and say, oh no, I'm a woman now.
Well, I didn't think about that.
Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the problem with the wokesters is they don't think there should be any boundaries at all about anything, and yet that then they create the most strict, crazy, insane boundaries. Whereas there is a history of intelligent boundaries, in culture that has to be looked at. That's all.
I mean, I'm not the first. I think, and I don't think even Wilbur was the first in noting there's a strange marriage between woke philosophy, these kind of things, trans women and real women, competing in the same thing, and the infatuation with Islam, because
Mhm.
there's a strange connection there, and with these patriarchal, red meme kind of anti-feminists, you know, stances in the world. And it's like at the same time you have the lefties that are so enamored with, these with this Eastern practices of devaluing women, and the same people are promoting, trans women hitting women in the boxing contest. And it's like
Well,
these are not different phenomena. These are the same phenomena. And it's
yeah,
like, and the question then is why? Because we're lacking these structures, and this is like our subconscious, trying to reintegrate them in some form of capacity.
yeah, it's basic psychoanalysis, right? It's like if you have a lot of animus towards something in you, then you're going to think of that thing all the time, and you're going to become perversely attracted to it, right? You know, and then the whole game. So it's obvious that the radical feminist is going to be perversely attracted to the super patriarch. Just like it's obvious that the guys who are so offended by this thing at the Olympics, by this trans event at the Olympics, are going to be the guys who are probably most turned on by it in a way, because offense is intimacy with something, right?
Right.
If you're offended, if you're outraged by something, then there's something in you that is um, intimate with that thing that you're so offended and outraged by.
So let me ask this way more poignantly. So why would an over feminized female, right? Over sensitive and over
What's the
over caring kind of Karen mother figure. Why would she be infatuated with pre-modern, anti-feminist, super patriarchal, anti-feminist philosophies and worldviews? Why? So do you get what I'm saying?
Because it's the opposite of what they are, because we're always attracted to difference and contrast and what's and as I just said, we're always want to be intimate with what is gives us the most offense. What do you think? You're always cornering me with these questions, and I'm going to end up saying something extremely politically incorrect. And
Oh no, but it's opposite day, so we can say whatever we want.
what do you think about that? Like you asked me the question, I want to throw it back at you.
I mean, I think there, with each gender, there arise certain possibilities and limitations. So there are some some are brain wired, some are socially wired, some, there are differences in world construction for males and females, and
Yeah.
again, and so in some way limiting, in other ways enabling, and I think in some form of capacity, um, these strange anti-feminist stances, from Islam, or from the woke movement, you know, um,
Maybe it's a question of submission, right?
they're lacking kind of direction, and I think like in a Petersonian sense, you know, I think females love to be put into place by men at some point.
Well, this is what I was thinking of. There's a negative form of submission, which is just a kind of humiliation. And then there's a positive form of submission, right? And Islam is all about sort of submission to God and submission, right? So maybe these women are trying to be so independent and so strong and so, and they are, many of them are, and, that there's a longing for submission somewhere there. Even if it's a perverse longing for submission, because there is a kind of positive submission. In the West, we don't like submission, but there's a positive sort of submission, and that is like just laying yourself down in front of what is greater than oneself, or bigger, or just worshiping something bigger than you, and that's what religion primarily was once about, and people want to throw that out, but then they throw that out, and then they start to worship movie stars, or they start to worship terrorists, or they start to worship all kinds of things because they don't have this thing to worship. There's something about the devotional nature of, let's say, the feminine, which is about worship, which is about submission in a positive sense, right? Not only because there's also an aspect of the feminine which is very much about you know, cutting through, but I don't know if I said anything controversial there, or
No, again, we have opposite day. We can say whatever we want today.
Mhm.
Um, um, I think, with the submission is, if you submit as a female, to the patriarchal fist, let's say,
Mhm.
in a metaphorical and in a real sense, obviously, because they have a boxing match. So if you submit to the patriarchal fist, that makes life very easy, and we're living in a complex world, and as a woman, with their presumably higher social intelligence, that not just to apply to the inner circles of the tribe, but to the outer world of the, of the patriarchal world. That's too much complexity. And so it makes life easier if you submit to the male fist in a kind of way. It makes life easier. And I think
Mhm.
that's the subcutaneous, the subconscious drive there, because like why else would you promote um an anti-feminist uh, worldview in Olympics and in Islam? It's like, why? There's only one reason: because the world is too complex for you, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Mhm. Yeah, well, I was saying again, in this question of submission, I also want to say is like uh, ooh, the erotic dynamic is always the submission of one to the other. It could go both ways, You know, in my own practices, there's submission to the red goddess, but the god, this is what man wants to do, is submit himself to the red goddess, right? And what women want to do is submit themselves to the fierce masculine.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So that's in us, and whether we're male or female, and there's different combinations of that. There's some, we want to submit ourselves to something, and we want to serve something, right?
That's interesting what you're
We
saying.
need
Yeah,
to serve. We need to serve. Basically, we need to
yes.
serve. I think this is where we need to serve something. So, we can serve Bacchus, we can serve Jesus, but we have to serve, right? We have to serve
Yeah, what you're
Dionysius.
saying, just let me interject because that's super interesting. What you're saying, that there is an implicit sacred contract between males and females, and the if and what is the word, a submission on one side to the other. It's only possible if the other has equal opportunity to submit, right? It's a contract,
Yeah,
and
there
if
should be
that's
an equal submission.
and
Yeah.
if that's out of whack in a kind of way, if the woman isn't able to submit to the man isn't able to submit to the goddess within the woman.
Yeah.
And if the man doesn't come from a point of strength and isn't able to let go and submit to the red goddess, then she isn't able to submit to the warrior prince or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's a contract there, and I mean that worked. I mean, it's like I was saying that it worked for 20,000 years, and now for 300 years we kind of have new kind of ideas how the male female polarity is going to work. But it's like these structures, like Christianity, they're in there. You know,
Nothing's new under the sun, right? In a
can't get
way.
rid of these old polarities in a kind of way.
Yeah, that's great. And also it solves the problem. Like the conservative, right, person wants the woman to submit to them, right? That's the patriarchal male wants the woman to submit to them to the point where they're going to put women in burqas, and that's the patriarchal at its most extreme, toxic, whatever. And then the the other side of the thing is that the woman wants the man to submit to them, right? And that's kind of the left right now, I think. The woman wants the man to completely submit to the let's say the goddess. Um, and but again, there has to be an interplay between those two things. There has to be
Right.
both going on. Otherwise, we end up on one hand we end up with toxic patriarchy, on the other hand we end up with toxic matriarchy. So toxic patriarchy is the right, and toxic matriarchy is the left when it becomes extreme and doesn't acknowledge the other, right?
There's another aspect of what you're saying, namely that a weak man, the submission of a weak man is not high value. Only when
Mhm.
you're a strong man and you submit, then the woman can see the value in submission because he has to give up a lot. A weak man who is already submissive, like a postmodern green, Gen X,
Exactly.
there's no value in his submission because he already has submitted. And so when a woman and these progressive like look for Islam and look for trans women, then what they're looking at are strong men that are able to submit, so their sacrifice to the mission to the man is becoming valuable. Like,
Yeah.
so there's the polar, you can't your sacrifice as a weak man, as a effeminate man, has no value because you're already submissive.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, there's a weak form of submission as well, right? Which is just slavishness, right? This is being a slave to something, right? And that's not really submission because that always contains resentment within it, right? And that's not love submission. Like submission in terms of eros, in terms of love, is not becoming somebody's slave, right?
Right,
That's different. Right? It might be that you want to sacrifice for that person, but
right,
it's not becoming their slave. So your agency is in your sacrifice, not in your slavishness, which makes you resentful, right? You're full of
right.
resentment if you're
Yeah, 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 yeah.
the slave is full of resentment. Uh-huh. Whereas the devotee in the good sense, in the positive sense, or the one who submits themselves is never a slave. He does that willingly, and it's a sacrifice.
Because you have to ask all these kind of woke, uh, progressive. I mean, I'm talking now about Germany, but that happens also in Great Britain and everywhere. It's like, why would they allow, the increasing amount of attacks, knife attacks all over Europe by these migrant boys? Like, why isn't there like a strong enforcement out of, remigration, or like I don't know what's the proper English word to send them back to the home nation? And it's like because they're infatuated with these kinds of uh, you know patriarchal powers and agency. And that's
Yeah,
what
Trump
the
had a phrase called idiot compassion. Idiot compassion is when you're compassionate towards the person who is, walking all over you and abusing you and it's, and
yeah.
gaslighting you and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of idiot compassion, in the left, and there's a lot of sort of
Yeah, but that's what I mean. There's like I'm
anti-compassion on
not
the
I'm
right,
talking about the deeper structure. Not I mean like on the surface level, it's idiot compassion, but beneath that there's a desire, a desire for the strong male fist in a kind of way,
Mhm.
and that's what's driving the whole thing. And it's like that's so weird because it's like you need a translator to understand the cultural phenomena at the time, and the media isn't providing that anymore. That's the weird thing.
Yeah. Well, what's the strong male fist? What is that? That's protection, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what's attractive about it is it's going to protect you, right? And it's going to
So,
keep out the dangerous outsider, right? So we need to have a sense of protection, a feeling of protection, right? And if we just open up all the borders and open up all the boundaries between people, and everybody can define themselves as who they are, and then it doesn't really work.
I mean, everybody knows by now the video of Sean Connery being interviewed by Barbara Walters, where she asked him, "Okay, so you did an interview like 5 years ago where you said it's normal and okay to hit a woman." And then she goes on to ask him, "Do you still stand by this argument, by this thing you said like five years ago?" And he says, "Oh, yes. I I would still like it's like a good thing to hit a woman," he basically said. And so she's like flabbergasted. But the point is he never had to. There's not one recorded instance where he had to a recorded instance where he says he actually did hit a woman because he don't had to, because he set up boundaries, and so that's not just protection. It's like to this point and no further,
Yeah,
right? And it's
but
like, and females are attracted to this as are males. It's like this means what strength means. It's like setting up strong boundaries, and because like women, everybody knows women are all over the place if you give them no boundaries. And that's not good for kids, that's not good for relationship, and that's not good for women themselves. If their social intelligence goes rampant. It's like
it's
everybody.
interesting. Like in my relationship, I think my wife is more boundary oriented, and I'm more all over the place. But um, like she's more like this. We need
You're,
to put a boundary here. We need to. Maybe I'm just a trans guy at heart or something. I don't know.
yeah, you're the bitch in the relationship. Is that what you're
The son of the
saying?
bitch in it. No, I mean I'm the exploratory kind of. I go outside the boundary, right? And that
Right.
is masculine because we do go outside boundaries. And she's like, oh, we have to be safe and keep the boundary. And I'm like, no, come on, let's, try this or let's do
Yeah.
this. So I don't think that's not masculine. So, yeah, I mean, obviously you're not saying that we should hit women or something, because I think that is a good progressive thing that is
Am I?
good that well, no. I mean, you're sort of championing this Sean Connery fellow is like, oh, this is great. Oh, got to have that, I think it's great that we don't have that mentality anymore. We've perhaps lost something in terms of our respect for what you called the male fist, or just male violence, male power in that sense, because it is the protective force. It is the protective principle, and we need that. And if we let that down, the country of Tibet, for example, became very Buddhist. It became very compassion oriented, right? And they did it. They just gave up their army, and so they were completely subject to the Chinese that came in and invaded.
Right.
It's like they had all the good intentions, they had all the good compassion and all that, but then the Chinese army came and invaded because they sort of let down they didn't respect the warrior principle. So
No, what I'm saying is, and when I'm talking about the metaphor of the male fist, I thought that was like because of the boxing content. And because of Islam, and I think, males and females are best when their uh, abilities and capabilities work together in a kind of way. That being said, I also know that, women kind of sometimes, um, and their social intelligence runs amok,
Mhm.
and and this has also be put into boundaries. It's not just that the male exploratory and way of life has to be put into boundaries by the females. you
Yeah,
know it's like, oh no, you have to
of
provide,
course.
you can't. It's like also the female intelligence has to be put into boundaries, and that what the interplay between males and females are about. We are better if we're working together. And so it's like when we're enabling each other and saying, okay, this is the way to go, and probably not so good if we go that way, right? And so there's a limit, and that's what I mean. It's like, as a man, you have to be able to put certain boundaries for the women, as the woman should have certain boundaries for the man, right? That's what I mean.
Well, if you don't have boundaries, in a relationship, you end up just, devouring each other. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
like, for example,
you've
like
probably
one
been
of
in
the
a
boundaries,
relationship with no boundaries, and
one
I've
of the
been in one
boundaries a
too.
woman is setting up for a man is just don't fuck around. It's like you
Oh
have a
yeah,
family now.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
every man would like, no, I would like to fuck around,
Hmm.
but a woman has the evolutionary grown sword, let's say, in her voice. It's like, no, you don't fuck around anymore. And we
I
say,
never
oh,
found out that. I just found that like I decided not to not fuck around. I never found that there was some like o overarching kind of like
yeah, but you know
message.
what I
Oh,
mean,
you better not fuck around because then I would feel like a child. It's more like I've signed this contract equally with you, and I'm not
right?
going to fuck around. It's not that she has to tell me or you know what I mean?
But you know what I mean. It's like,
No, no,
oh,
but
you
like
looked at
what?
her. You probably had, every man has had the discussion that, you were at the supermarket and the hot blonde with the big tickets came, and you accidentally, because you're evolutionary driven, to look at her ass, and your woman is like, what the fuck are you doing? And that's what I mean. That's
No,
normal. Huh?
no.
What? No.
That's
You
never
don't, you have
happened. That's never happened in my relationship. It's
never
because
in your life with
we
any
don't treat
partner
each other like children, right?
that
I'm
never happened.
discreet. I'm discreet, and if my eyes, so what?
That never happened in your life
That
with
never happened
previous.
in my. And no, I'm talking about in my
No, I
present
mean, I'm
marriage.
generally, everybody knows that experience.
Yeah,
Every man.
not really. Not.
You haven't had that with any woman, that she was like kind of jealous because you look too long to another
Looked
woman.
along and said, "Oh yeah." I mean,
There you
jealousy.
go.
Mhm.
There you
Yeah,
go. So
jealousy.
that's what I
Yeah,
mean. And that's a boundary that a woman is setting,
yeah,
which is perfectly fine.
yeah. Well, I mean, my only point is that it's implicit and it doesn't have to be top down. It can be just it's a contract that you both sign with each other, right? It's like what the rules of the
You know, by
rules of engagement are, and that's what it is. So if I notice somebody in the thing, I might avert my eyes. Be if I'm with my wife. If I was alone, I might look a little bit longer because
But
it
that's
just
what's called internalization. So you have internalized the female setting boundaries. So
of
you don't
course,
do it anymore. But it's still, you have internalized the voice of previous girlfriends that chastised you because you were looking too long. And now you went into a relationship, and now you're an adult enough to say, no, I'm doing that self-referentially. It's like, I don't need your voice. I have that in me now. Right.
hmm
But so
hmm
that's what I mean, but it's still an internalized voice, right?
Sure. But when it's an externalized voice, then I would feel like a child. Like I'd feel like, oh, I'm being treated like a child, and I wouldn't like
Right.
it.
There you go. And that's the same thing for women. It's like what a man is enabling is for a woman, it's like to set up certain boundaries. And at the time she enters marriage, she should have internalized these voices. And this is basically psychoanalysis 101.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like she should have internalized the voices, but initially she needs a strong male to enforce certain rules. And that's what happens in puberty. And when you're growing up until your brain is fully functional with 25, so you need the external voices. So by the time you go into marriage, you don't need them anymore,
Yeah,
right?
you
And
don't
so
need to
that's what I
enforce. I
mean.
don't think there's any enforcing going on particularly, right? Enforcing is for
That's the
children.
point. That's the point. Nowadays, it's not. It's like because nowadays it's frowned upon that a man is setting boundaries for women. And
Yeah.
that's the whole dynamic that the woman now, it's like, and the progressive and effeminate women are looking for Islam and looking for trans women hitting women in the boxing contest because they're looking for something. Please put us into our place. Because it's
Mhm.
insane.
Mhm.
It's
Okay.
like it's like a woman is like, oh no, going running amok with the fantasies. Like somebody has to say something. It's insane. You don't put a female and a male in the same weight category together in the boxing ring. It's insane. It's like I care. I understand that you want to care and you want to make it fair for everybody, but this has limits. You can't put a male and a female in a boxing ring. And the same goes for the integration of Islam. It's like it's good.
Yeah. I guess
It's
I'm
like you can.
conservative there too. I wouldn't think
Huh?
that sorry, I'm interrupting. Finish your
No, but it's the same with Islam. It's like immigration is good if there's an immigration and like an integration going on, and
Mhm.
and and there are like societal structures set up so the people that come from different states find ways to actually integrate. But you can't just open the borders and create ghettos in every city where they can still where they're not integrate. So where there are different subcultures that develop resentment against the host nation. And so it's like it's the same thing. You need strong boundaries for everything you do.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's the same thing. It's like it's the same what happens in the boxing ring and what happens in the ghettos. It's like conceptually speaking, it's the same thing.
Okay, I have a confession to make, Tom, and you might really hate me after I say this.
No, go ahead.
I really hate the song Imagine by John Lennon. I just hate that song because it's and I think this is the part of the Olympic ceremony which I dislike the most is the singing the song Imagine because the Imagine says there is no hell above us, there is no heaven. I think there's all kinds of hells and all kinds of heavens, and I think that is the progressive lie of no boundaries, right? Imagine there's no boundaries is what he's saying, and there are boundaries,
Right.
there's only no boundary at the ultimate level, but if we're gonna, if we're going to play, if we're going to, and also if we're going to play with each other in the world, we don't want to imagine there's no heaven and no hell and all that. So that
Yeah.
anyway. So I hate that, and also it's an anthemic song, so it's a manipulative ideological song. I love John Lennon and I love a lot of his songs, but the song Imagine, poorly chosen for the Olympics.
Yeah. I mean, it
Because
has.
because again, that's the Rousseauian fake dream of no boundaries and just the
Right.
mother.
Right.
Maybe that's I think that is in line with what we were talking about, what you were
Sure.
saying, how we need
But
boundaries.
I think you can't put this onto the feet of John Lennon because he was rebelling against his patriarchal structures and he went to therapy and scream therapy and he had so many demons that to imagine a world without boundaries, that was the reaction against modernity in a kind of way. But what society has made out of this song, that's completely different.
Okay, fair enough. I guess the song is okay in the moment that he wrote it. But as an anthem and
Yeah, yeah, I completely
as an
agree.
anthem for culture, I think it's pretty ugly. It's
Yeah,
interesting this no boundary thing. There's this thing called the Sphere in Las Vegas. Have you heard of that?
yeah,
And it's this giant boundaryless. So the experience of being in it is there are no edges anymore. There's no
yeah,
boundaries, and I think that is profound, actually, on the spiritual level. On the relative level, we need boundaries. On the spiritual level, there are no boundaries. So there is a no boundaryness that is interesting. I think that's kind of interesting that you could be in a sphere, which is like you've taken out the edges and the boundaries of experience, and you just go and go and go. And It's kind of interesting from an artistic point of view, but
True.
hmm.
Okay, that was it for opposite day.
That's
Um,
today's opposite day. Okay. I'm not sure if I understood the concept.
you don't know what opposite day is?
No, it's opposite day.
Opposite days, you can say everything because everything is turned around 180 degrees.
Okay.
Everything what is true is false, and what is false is true.
Hmm. But we didn't say anything that we wouldn't normally say on a normal podcast, did we?
Did we?
I don't know.